Okay everyone, so in this next lesson I just want to go and tackle the Unicode characters and how we can go and use it as an icon inside of our HR here. So I actually have here a good article that was written by Miss Emma Kinch. I will be leaving the link to this article on how to use Unicode characters. And if you're wondering what Unicode characters are, you would see here that the explanation here is very simple. Unicode characters are basic characters that we can directly insert into our web page. And you won't need any external request when you're trying to load this kind of character, which can help us cut down on load time of our web page. So when we say load time, that's the time from where the whole browser here is rendering the web page for the user to view it. Another benefit of using the Unicode characters is that it is a font and not an image. So when people manually adjust their screen, it says here that the Unicode will be adjusting as well. Unicode can be used in HTML and CSS in two slightly different ways. One will be through using this format from where we will be using the and the hash symbol at the beginning of the number and a semicolon at the end. You would see the result here of the code that's written here inside of our H3 element, the code here, and this is how it got displayed on the browser. And another alternate way to insert Unicode characters into our web page is to use the CSS file, and we will be using the pseudo element, the before and the after. As stated here, the benefit of using the Unicode inside of our CSS is that we can style it independently. So we do have some examples here. So I actually have here the Unicode table, and I've already opened up our watch emoji here from where we will be using this so that we can insert it in between or in the middle of our horizontal rule here. Okay, so I just wanted to go and show you how to do this, so at least you'll have an idea. So let's go to our code, and I would suggest that you read more about the use of Unicode if you're interested to know more about how it is used. I will just leave the link in our course resources and also the link to the unicodetable.com from where you can go and look for different types of Unicode. So let's just first go to our code editor here, and let's try to go and change some of the values that we have here. So for the HR element, I would want to give it a border of 3 pixels, double, and a color of red. And for the rest of the code here, I'm just going to go and comment that out. So let's first see what that looks like on our browser. Now what I want to do here is to have a general styling for all of the HRs that we will be applying inside of our website. So let me just go back to our code editor here, and then we will have specific styling that will be for the first HR that is located after our navigation. So let's go and try to apply that. I'm going to give a class name to our HR here after the header, and I'm going to give it a style -1 class name. And then here, let me just go and select that HR style -1. Let me just go and put a comment here, horizontal rule styling. So what we are going to do here is that inside of the HR style -1, I want to play around with the borders. I just want to correct this. That's the reason why the border is not working properly. The color of the border was not being displayed properly. So let's go back to our browser. Let's first see what that should look like. Okay, so that will be it. Now I go back to our code. I'll go back to our code editor here, and then let's try to apply some border properties here. I want to have this 5 pixels, double red, Let's see how that will look in our browser. Okay, so it's much larger than the other horizontal rules that we have. Now let's go back to our code editor. Let's have the border right none. Let's go back to our browser. Let's have a width first, so at least we can see width of 90%. Let me just see here, what will that look like? Okay, so we were able to remove the border on the right of our horizontal rule. So you can play around with the properties of your horizontal rule. So border bottom none. Let's check that out again. I just want to show you here one at a time on what's happening right now. So there's no more border at the bottom. Let's go back to our code here. Let's also remove the border left none. Let's go back to our browser, refresh. Okay, so now we only have the border top with the 5 pixels double value. Okay, so let's go back to our code editor here. I just want to go and now have that 100%. And then I want to select the after pseudo element. So hr style -1 after, and then insert the content property here. And as according to our reference, the article that we read here, we will need to go and remove the u plus and just insert into our CSS the value 231A while using the backslash character. So let's go and apply that in our code. So let's go and use the backslash character and 231A. Let's save that. Let's see what will that look like on our browser. Let's refresh. Okay, so we now have a Unicode character on our website. Now I want that to be in the middle. So if you remember, it was explained here that this is considered as a font and not an image. So if we want to go and center that, what we just need to go and do is to go here and use the property text align center. Let's go back to our browser here and let's see how that will look like. Okay, so we now have our watch Unicode in the middle of our website. Let's go back to our code. And the next thing that I want to do here is to go and position it relatively, and I want to give it a value of -23 pixels. And let's see how that will look inside of our browser. So there you go. There it is in the middle and it went up. And I want to change the font size to 28 pixels. Font size 28 pixels. Let's save that. Now let's go and try to see how that looks on our browser. There we go. We now have our Unicode character on top of our horizontal rule. And we learned that this Unicode character is being treated as a font, and that we use the position relative so that we can maximize the use of the top property, and we move it -23 pixels so that we can move it up in our browser vertically, and we increase its size by means of using the font size property of 28 pixels. Now I just want to show you here, if we go and remove the position relative here, if you remembered the rule of the position property that we tackled in previous lessons, and if we go and try to refresh this, you would see that it moved down and it did not render the property that we gave it, which is the value of negative 23 pixels, mainly because static positioning will not be accepting the properties top, bottom, left, and right for the positioning property, right? And that's why we use the relative property value here for the position property of our HR element, with a pseudo element after that contains the Unicode character that we have declared inside of the content property. Some keynotes that I want to tackle here as final remarks are the limitations as tackled by Ma'am Emma, and that will be when it comes to accessibility, not all screen readers will be reading out Unicode. So you have to keep this in mind if you're going to be relying on it when it comes to conveying something to your user, because some of the portions of our website may not be accessible. And if the user has changed their default font, then the Unicode may not be able to render in that specific font library. And it would cause your character to render like this box here. And lastly, she said here that some companies have default emojis included in their libraries that can cause your characters to render differently than you expected. So if we had this Unicode character that originally looks like this, it might end up rendering like this. Depending on the company's default library, it might render the character in the examples given here. So for Facebook, Twitter, and other different companies that uses different libraries for their emojis. The good thing about unicodetable.com is that it's going to be showing you some examples here on how the Unicode character will be displaying depending on the place from where they will be rendered.